Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So of course, there's many ways to explain the Buddha's teachings, if you need explaining. Whereas we got a lot of experts here today. Probably most people have heard the short version, morality, meditation, wisdom. But of course, if you have the interest, when we begin to unpack it, we find that there's quite a few aspects to it. The morality, meditation, wisdom is just the threefold explanation of the eightfold path. And I like to have short versions of things. Like they have nice, neat, short answers. But of course, when you begin to look at details of things, sometimes they become too much. You can't handle them all. But from 3 to 8, that's not too big a stretch, is it? It's even less than your fingers. But then you start to, ideally, you're practicing with this. The whole point is to practice the Buddhist teaching, so it's not just a matter of a theory. When I first learned about Buddhism, it was from a book, so it sounded so easy. Morality, meditation, wisdom. Okay, right, I got that. But then when I started to practice it, I got a bit confused because there's more aspects to it. We think we understand the word morality, but when it comes down to the practice, it's about our bodily actions and our speech. And these are things we're using all the time. And if you're a little bit aware of your bodily actions and speech, you see how different they are too. Just an example of speech. We think, oh yes, I'm not talking about dialects here, but what you're saying to people, what you comes out of your mouth, how you speak, and just to be able to recognize, for example, the boundaries of morality with regard to speech. We realize, oh, gee, I'm saying a lot of things. One time Ajahn Chah just very simply said, he said, the more you talk, the more you lie. Of course, it's based upon one of the principles of the forest tradition, speak little, eat little, sleep little, and meditate a lot. But of course, we still have to speak, so to be able to recognize what the limits are, what the benefits are of wholesome speech and the detriment of unwholesome speech. That's really the key to understanding morality. The very simple principle of karma. Unskillful actions give painful results. Skillful actions gives wholesome results. But when you put it into practice, most people, they usually speak before they think. Rather than reflect upon what you're going to say, it just kind of rolls out. And then, maybe you have some regrets. But once you can recognize the benefits and the detriment of these actions, then you're a bit more careful what you say. Be a bit more circumspect. And of course, the same with meditation practice. At first, I first heard the instructions. Oh, just sit there and watch your breath. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's very, very easy to say, but when it comes to the practice, it might take a little bit of experience. Usually, first of all, we just are observing our our concept of breathing. It takes a while before we actually get to the direct experience of breathing. Just being aware of breath without thinking about it. Okay, we left half the people behind by then. Huh? Half of you got lost already. Huh? It just took me about 5 years to understand that. I was so caught in my head about concepts, I just thought watching the breath was watching a concept of breath. It took quite a while before it actually got to the breath itself. And then there's, the wisdom part of it. I mean, this is, various kinds of wisdom, you can say. I mean, just very practically speaking, most of us start off with the wisdom we learn. Just learn about from somebody else, from books and things. There is a kind of, I wouldn't say it's wisdom, it's, it's knowledge, information. And then perhaps we can contemplate it a bit more from our own point of view. And then maybe it becomes understanding then. You read something in a book, you get the knowledge, but is this right? Contemplate it, think about it, investigate it. And maybe you get some understanding then. But the wisdom is, somebody said it, I forget who it was now, so don't quote me. They said, knowledge is knowing other people, but wisdom is knowing yourself. And it doesn't sound like much at the beginning, but if you really contemplate it, knowing yourself, we also, you have to take into consideration that the first thing you know about yourself is how much you can fool yourself. How much you can think you are so wise and so accomplished and in the control of your life, But when you begin to investigate a bit deeper, you realize the opposite. How little control you have over your life. Sometimes it takes a bit of a crisis, how much control you have over your body and your mind. Sometimes it take a little bit of a crisis, say of illness, and you realize I can't just, get through this. I am sick. The sickness is bigger than me. Then you got to look at the causes of it. What are the background influences? And then maybe you can do something about it. And be very patient. And even more so the mind. I mean, if you're able to maintain a certain amount of mental equilibrium, then your world seems reasonably stable. But sometimes you get confusion, you get doubt, you get worry, fear maybe. And most of us just push it away, but that's not a way to solve it, to resolve it. You have to find out what the causes of these, unskillful states of mind are. So it requires a bit of a study, investigation of them. So besides the kind of basic, morality, meditation, wisdom, the Buddha also gave some other supportive conditions. Probably the most important one for morality, the Buddha called them the two guardians of the world. In Pali, it's called Hiri Ottappa. Probably many of you haven't heard of it, Hiri Ottappa. That I would say it's personal and social conscience. If you have some personal conscience, some social conscience, then you're careful how you live your life and what you say and how you act. Yeah, and probably these days they might call it something like empathy or something. Having some empathy for other people, that's social conscience. And personal conscience is recognizing that, when you do something wrong, you're gonna pay. Your mind's gonna pay for it with guilt, remorse, maybe even fear or doubt. But these two, the Buddha called the guardians of the world. If you have a very strong sense of Hiri Ottappa, then you do have a sense of what's right and wrong on a very basic level. Then there are specifics of what's right or wrong. The 5 precepts. It's a pretty good standard. Standard, the Buddha said that if you can't follow the 5 precepts, and that's what the Buddha defined a human being. in the realms of the different realms of existence, a human being is able to keep the 5 precepts. It's hard for a cat to keep the 5 precepts. I think I'm not blaming cats, but I know we had a cat in the monastery in England, and we just couldn't stop it from killing birds. We had many discussions at our meetings, our sangha meetings about community meetings about how to solve the problem of the cat eating the birds. Somebody said, "Well, you should overfeed it with lots of food." We tried that, but it still hunted birds. It was just like it was an instinct in it. Anything that moves, it chased. Or how about we tie a bell around its neck? But then it was a danger it gets caught in a fence or something, and so anyway, I think we talked about it so much the cat got old and couldn't chase birds anymore. No solution. That's just cat karma, So, but the good news is human beings can learn. We don't need bells around our neck before we can learn to not kill. If you have some empathy, when you have some empathy for the other creatures, you have some empathy for them. Well, I don't want to be like that either. I don't want to have that danger. You see the birds around here just flitting around, and whenever they see a movement, they're off living in constant fear of being attacked or killed. But then from the morality, another standard the Buddha gave, if you want to refine it more, was he talked about it as guarding the doors of the senses. And you have the awareness with regard of the 6 senses, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. It's just like having a guardian with us, because that's where these unskillful influences creep into our mind, through the senses. When you see something which is you think is desirable, then you want it, then you want to steal it. Yeah. Well, not everybody, but I mean that's that could go to that extreme. You see, if you recognized what the nature of that is, all it is color and shape. And then we don't realize. I mean, there is actually quite a bit of a psychology behind it, because it all has to do with perception. We think that we are seeing reality. This is the true reality here, without realizing that we've been conditioned into accepting this perception. All your eye sees, all the eye here, physical eye sees, is color and shape. And then your mind says beautiful or ugly. It's all in your mind. And most of that has been just conditioned into us. I mean, if you think about how do we determine what's beautiful? I mean, there's feng shui and stuff like this, but but a lot of those perceptions are in your own mind. They've been conditioned into it. What's your standard of beauty? What's your standard of ugliness? Whatever. Conditioned by your education, by your culture, by your friends, your own experiences. For example, if somebody has, say, when they were a child, they've been bitten by a dog or something, they've been traumatized as a child by a dog bite. Well, to them, the dogs are terrible. They're really frightening monsters. Even when you get older, and you're twice as big as the dog, or you still have this fear within you. This implanted fear within you. This trauma is still there. So you see a dog, and immediately you're frightened. And somebody else is rushing towards the dog and saying, "Ooh, beautiful dog, coo, coo, coo." And you're saying, "Fear, terror." So is that dog a terror or cute little puppy, or something. What's the reality of it? Yeah, it's in your own mind, isn't it? So if we have a guardian at the doors of the senses, this gives us a very, very helpful support to recognize, what we're actually seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, even. And a lot of it is just perceptions. It's conditioned perceptions. It's not the real picture. I mean, if you see something you think is beautiful, if you just stop and say, "Oh, it's just shape and color," shape and color. Well, not so beautiful anymore. Maybe if you catch it enough, quick enough. And then that's where your mind stops, just shape and color. But I mean, this usually requires some degree of training. So the Buddha puts it into the form of a training to do, especially in the context of meditation practice. Yeah, if your mind is carried away by these perceptions, it's very hard for your mind to be calm. Then these things just keep replaying through your mind again and again and again. But most of the time, we don't pay much attention to it. You see what the Buddha said. You just see the general impressions of things. You don't actually see them as they really are. Then they give rise to greed or aversion, usually. If we aren't careful what we sense, there's a chance it can give rise to greed or aversion. And then then we can get lost in that, because we have another whole different collection of perceptions with regard to greed and aversion. Huh? See, if you have money in your pocket and you go to the shop, greed is allowed to the extent of your pocketbook or credit card or something. No, but if you go into a shop and don't have any money, then you might resort to having to steal it. But we recognize just what the real reality is, not just the perception, the distorted perception. There's the relative distorted perceptions. That something is beautiful or not so beautiful or whatever, frightening or welcoming. Then there's the real distortions, the Buddha said, about the distortions with regard to the reality, the true reality, the Dhamma, you can say. Yeah. You think about something you want, but if you reflect, it's impermanent. It's impermanent. It's going to pass away. It's going to fade away. Yeah. Sometimes as soon as you get something, well, the kind of enthusiasm's worn off already, isn't it? It was the excitement of having something new. Yeah. But then when you got it, okay, next thing, back to the internet shopping again. What's the next thing? or it's the real distortions of perception are that we mistake what is permanent, what is impermanent as permanent, what is satisfying as unsatisfactory, and what is self, permanent abiding entity, as non-self. Did I get that right? Other way around. Okay. Okay. The wrong perceptions, right perceptions. It's been a busy day. But once we begin to see through the nature of perceptions, begin to see things as they really are, then you can say, in a way, then things like morality becomes natural to us. First, we maybe have to train, because our conditioning is based upon wrong view, not seeing reality. Just like in some of the cultures, you see, killing animals is not looked upon as a bad thing, you see. But in other cultures, it is. It's a cultural conditioning. Or certain, we can even say that, that people have asked me about, Buddhists have asked me about how to live with insects, you see. Yeah, because, there is insects, like in Thailand, the mosquitoes have dengue fever and malaria. So how do you be a Buddhist and not kill, and then what? We allow the mosquito to kill me. So it was bad karma. You shouldn't do that. Bad karma for the mosquito. But if you do have that as an intention to refrain from killing, you can look around to find other alternatives. If you don't think about it, there's a story in Thailand. I don't know how true it is, but many years ago there was a movement by the government to try to eradicate malaria. You see, so went to all the villages. In those days, they were spraying DDT too. DDT is toxic. Probably killed more people than mosquitoes, but they didn't know that then. See, so went to the villages to spray the stuff, and villagers said, "What are you doing? We're killing mosquitoes." "No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Can't kill mosquitoes here. Go away, go away." So they had a lot of resistance. So somebody was very clever, and then they said, when they came to the village next time, they asked what they're doing. They said, "We're getting rid of malaria." "Okay, good, fine, stay here." Welcome. So they're still doing the same thing, but it's now spiritually correct or something, or religiously correct. They aren't killing mosquitoes; they're just getting rid of malaria. So that's allowed. Or I think I also heard, as another urban myth maybe, that the Thai fishermen, they don't kill the fish. They just take them out of the water, and the fish die by themselves. You see. So probably it does. I don't know if it eases their conscience somewhat. I guess that's the point. But there is a little bit of a point to it, because they aren't actually. When you're actually killing the fish, you have a violent attitude, aggressive attitude. Where this one is, you're just taking it out of the water and leaving it there, and then the fish dies, and you don't have to get too aggressive, you see. Unless they don't die quickly. And then but it's a matter of degrees, how much the degrees of karmic influence you give, you see. So normally, killing involves some aggressive state of mind, very negative state of mind. It takes a certain amount of aggression to do that. But, just as I think even the legal system in the West recognizes that. If you have premeditated intention to kill, then it's first-degree murder or something, I think. I'm not a lawyer, but something like that. But if it's, you kill somebody out of self-defense, well, that you don't really have the really determined intention to kill them, but you have to defend yourself. So, of course, it's manslaughter or something or other. It's a much lesser crime, you see. So it's the same with the principle of karma. If you have a really, really strong intention to kill, and you carry it through, that's very, very extreme. That's what 100% bad karma, you see. But if you even you have the intention to kill, but then you stop, then it's much, much less. Even though the intention, the Buddha said, is karma, but you haven't carried it through, so it hasn't been accomplished. So it was only 50% bad karma. But the more energy behind it, the stronger the negative intention, then the stronger the karmic influence. And likewise, the result will be that way too. So the most extreme karma, negative karma, for killing, is to kill your mother or your father. Naturally, we I mean, this is getting complicated now, but naturally you have some kind of empathy for your parents, even though they can be maybe irritating sometimes. But that's why I say it's complicated. But but they brought you into the world. They looked after you, ideally, for the average person. So to be able to want to kill them is really an extreme example of aggression, aversion, and aggression. So somebody who has killed their mother or father, they can't be a monk this life, can't ordain this lifetime. Yeah. Go wait next lifetime when you burn that karma off, I guess. But it's a very, very extreme form of karma then. Goes against a lot of our instincts, a lot of our normal conditioning. But sometimes people are driven to extremes, aren't they? By different circumstances. But if we recognize, just the effect that these impressions have on our mind, if you say something is ugly or negative, you define it that way, then it behind it is a certain degree of aversion. And if you aren't careful, reflecting on that, how that irritates me and annoys me and annoys me and annoys me, and then boom, and you just keep compounding that negative influence, and then maybe it will be enacted in a very, very strong effect. Then you recognize, oh, yeah, there's that irritation from something I define as ugly or threatening or something. So what's behind that? Just a perception. Maybe the perception, to a certain degree, has a little bit of effect, has some truth to it, if you can say, But you recognize it's only a perception, It's only how you interpret that. I'm sure you recognize sometimes somebody maybe has spoken to you and you're in a little bit of a sensitive mood, and you mistake that for some attack or something, totally misunderstood it. You recognize, it's just a perception. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't act on that. Even sometime when you've been provoked. There's a saying in English, when you feel anger, go for a walk around the block. Don't speak. Don't send an email when you're angry. It'll be in the universe forever. At least your speech will fade out, but if you get just an email, it'll be there forever, They'll pick it up on Jupiter somewhere. Some aliens will pick it up. But setting a awareness at the doors of the senses, I mean, this could be a very, very valuable support, to not only for your morality practice, but to understand the very basis of it. Many of the things we say and do are based upon perception, aren't they? Are these perceptions correct? Many times they're just distorted. If you recognize, for example, your own mood. We can recognize that when you're in a not a very say unskillful mood, irritable mood. Be careful what you say. It can have repercussions way down the line. You see. But until we understand these principles, I mean, we have to maybe rely upon the rules to follow. So the Buddha lays down, for example, the various 5 precepts, 8 precepts, 10 precepts. He lays these so-called rules down. I mean, they aren't really rules. I mean, we get a little bit mixed up with. I mean, I get mixed up with my Christian conditioning a bit, because that's where I so-called first learn religion. In Buddhism, in Christianity they have commandments. In Buddhism, we have training guidelines, you see. So when you take the precepts, you say, I undertake the training to refrain from killing. There's no God looking over your shoulder saying, I'm going to punish you if you do that. No. Maybe it is karma saying that, but it's an impersonal law of the universe, you see. But we undertake the training to follow this principle, you see, the best we can. And if we fail, then we have to reestablish that principle again, trying to guide our life by these principles. Until you see the result of it, then maybe you have to, kind of say, you have to hold yourself in check. At least somebody's told you, watch out. If you do that, you're going to get some bad results. But till you see it yourself, you don't really understand it. So once we have established some, guardians over our senses, I mean, this is also the very basis of meditation practice, developing the mind. You see how these influences come in through the senses. The very basics is that the Buddha gave the instruction, when you're going to meditate, first of all, go to a quiet place. Go off to the forest. Well, in India, it was the forest. I guess the villages are very noisy, I guess. Here, the forests are very noisy. Well, you can understand if you live in Thailand, when the weekend comes around and the big loudspeakers come out and they start blasting music all around the neighborhood, you see. So even into the forest. But it generally it helps if you're in a quieter place, to try and focus on the breathing. The breathing is quite subtle, so if you're in a noisy place, then you're by the noise. Close your eyes so you reduce the impact, the impressions from the eyes, the visual impressions. We do maybe light some incense, uplift your smell. and especially, good to brush your teeth before you meditate. You aren't tasting your lunch all afternoon. No. And then sitting in a comfortable position. So your body is relaxed and comfortable, reasonably comfortable. Then we can work on our mind. And again, it's the similar thing. If you can create the right mental environment for meditation practice. I mean, this can be another great topic. Maybe I'll leave it for the next talk. Be here all night. No. Think about this one. But if we're providing the right conditions for the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and then the mind too, right? Mental environment. For example, some people, they find coming into like a place like this, meditation hall, or people who meditate at home, they have their own space, their own particular place where they meditate. Well, and what the influences are sometimes, but I can sense some influences occasionally. For example, when we went to Switzerland the first time, we lived in an apartment. Yeah, forest monks in the apartment, right? Trees were nearby. It's a small village, so we just had to walk 5 minutes into the forest. So, but it was an apartment, an old apartment, and our meditation hall was the living room. And I thought it was just me, but the energy in this room was really weird. I can only put it down to the television must have been in that room. It was just, my mind would not be very calm, you see. It was really a bit frazzled. But then during that time, we were fixing up the attic for a meditation hall, you see. We had the top 2 floors. And so we converted the attic into the meditation hall. And then downstairs was the eating hall, you see. Well, eating room, really, not a hall. So when we got the attic finished, renovated, and we went up there to sit, totally different. was so peaceful. Nobody had been there. See, no people, no television, just old furniture and maybe a few rats, but they didn't speak English, so they're very quiet too. But it was such a difference, you know. And I mean, I don't know the theory of all this. Some people talk about how, like the physical materials, they absorb the vibrations of energies of people and televisions, whatever. But in the attic, there was none of this, no people energy. There was no television energy. It was just a very, very quiet, peaceful place. And all of us kind of, it wasn't just me. All of us felt something different. Then another time we went to give a retreat in another place in eastern Switzerland, also a house which was converted into a meditation center. And we went, the meditation hall was upstairs again in the attic. And I think it was the first night, I think, we were sitting up there, and wow, it was very peaceful here. I just thought it was, it was like out in the countryside somewhere, and it was, it was very, I don't know, it was a peaceful place anyway. And then I came down to the eating hall, and it was different, and it was so noticeable. I said to the man, I says, "Has anybody said everybody said anything about the meditation hall upstairs?" He said, "You weren't the first person to mention that," he said. So maybe, can you feel it when you come in here? Or you just hear people's voices? Or there's something to do with the space, but also the quality of mind that comes here. I'm trying to impress you. Try to compliment you. The peaceful minds that come here and seep into the floor. We energize the floor and the ceiling. And it seems a bit too far away, but closer to the floor. Though you can pick up, you recognize the benefits of these. You can say quiet, silence, or just the visual impressions. I mean, just being in a place which is visually pleasing, for example. The monastery in New Zealand, Wellington, also has a very beautiful meditation hall. And I mean, I didn't really appreciate it myself. I mean, it was, we live in lots of beautiful halls, you see. But and we go in there every day, you see, twice a day, 3 times a day. But then one day there was this group of they were I think a trekking club or something, a walking club, asked to come to the monastery because it's quite a big piece of forest we have. See? So it's part of public relations to be friendly to the neighbors, So I said, "Oh yes, you can. You're welcome to come." Yes. So can we see your meditation hall? Yeah. So I was a bit surprised. Most people just want to go walk in the bush, you see. But no, you want to see the meditation hall. So okay. So I walked over there, and she stepped into the room, and she said, "Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful." I said, "Yeah, I guess so." She's just walking in here. I feel so spiritual. She said, or something or other. But so these perceptions, they can be positive or negative, you see. When we understand the influences by setting a guard at your sense doors, you recognize what these impingements do to us. Pleasant sights or unpleasant sights, and maybe if you can investigate, what's behind it, maybe you recognize, oh, when I'm in a big space like this, then maybe I feel relaxed. Maybe it's just the openness of the place. When I was traveling in Thailand, I used to go on these walking tours, and down to different monasteries. And one of the strongest impressions was I was at one monastery, very small place, in the countryside too, very quiet. But the place I had to do walking meditation was right next to the forest. And I was not afraid of, tigers or anything like that. Just like doing walking meditation there, back and forth and back and forth. The mind was just not quieting down. But I'm not afraid of ghosts either. It wasn't ghosts. It wasn't tigers. The mind wouldn't be quiet. So, the Buddha advised that if we stay in a place, even though it has very good food, but your mind is not peaceful, you should move on. So 3 days there, not a peaceful mind. So, okay, time to move on. Even the food wasn't good either, though. So I wasn't that tempted to stay. It was good enough, but no. So went on to the next place. The next place was a really strange one because the villagers had cut down all the forest. The whole valley was denuded of forest, except for one little piece, which was the forest monastery. Like it was about 50 meters by 50 meters of forest. They had a very nice little wooden hut there with a grass roof, which is comfortable. But what happened was that they were very lucky in a way because this Japanese company came and wanted to use it as a place to grow the special tree there. And this was a really strange, it wasn't a Thai tree, it was some kind of strange tree, and it was very secret. They called it just Mai To Reo, the fast-growing tree. And they had the nursery was guarded, so nobody stole any plants out of it. It was very strange. It looked like a giant beanstalk, a bean plant, with a big leaf on it. If you never heard the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, yeah. Well, I had nightmares of these plants coming out and sneaking into my place at night. Anyway, I stayed there a little while and moved on to the next place, way up the mountain. It's quite a trek up there. And when I got up to this mountain, there was a beautiful scenic view over the hills and the valleys below. A nice walking path there. And I thought, I won't get peaceful here. I'll be looking at the view all the time, you see. But started doing walking meditation, and the mind just went very quiet. Is the vibes here? So I tried to contemplate what was the cause of this, and I had my perception was, my interpretation anyway, was my mind likes to have lots of space. That's why I have this new kuti over there. With a beautiful view over the valley, you see. Or when I'm in a place where it's really cramped in and closed in, I don't know, my mind just doesn't feel very relaxed, you see. So anyway, that's my personal problem. So you can recognize, well, I don't know why, maybe it was these dreams of this beanstalk coming in and strangling me. When you become aware of these perceptions and the impressions that come to you, then you can recognize, okay, sometimes you might need extra support for your meditation practice. A quiet place, or a beautiful place, or a spacious place. If your mind is not in a good space, perhaps you have to seek it out physically, externally then. And you can give your meditation practice perhaps a bit of support. But ideally, not to become too limited by it either. There's some people who can only meditate when they come to a meditation hall, for example. Well, you live far away from a meditation hall, don't do a lot of meditation then, do you? No. But you can actually, you can watch the breath anywhere. But sometimes you can maybe get some support, extra support in a more, you can say for you, a wholesome environment, but not to be limited by that either. You can learn something by, challenging environments. Having to be in a place which is noisy, for example. That can be a very interesting meditation. Or being in a place which is not so comfortable to you, for you. Looks why is this environment causing this particular mood in my mind? And maybe there is something behind it. Maybe there is some kind of, old trauma or something. Maybe it's just a matter of your own preferences, for example. But don't be limited by your own preferences either. That was part of the practice in Thailand, to go wandering around to seek different places, kind of challenge yourself too in different places. Some were comfortable, some were not so comfortable. But if your meditation practice is a bit fragile, a bit vulnerable, then maybe you need to seek for places which are more supportive. But other time we should stretch it out a bit to challenge our practice, because we can learn from everything. Even when it's a challenging situation, we learn to challenge yourself with something, you can learn from that too. What's really the obstacle here? Is it just your attachment to comfortable places, or is it something else? That's one aspect of yourself. You learn about yourself then from these challenges too. Slowly began to get more and more understanding of the nature of ourself. Its limitations, its strengths, weaknesses. And the Buddha encourages us to develop the positive qualities. And this is exemplified by the spiritual powers, and then try and put away the hindrances or obstacles gradually. It requires some development of mind. What we call meditation, bhavana, means development. Developing you can say, trying to develop qualities which will give us some more strength, spiritual powers, and put away the ones which are going to limit us or obstruct us. So as we delve into the Buddha's teachings, we find there's quite a lot of treasures there to investigate. And Buddha gave us a very detailed path of practice, very well spelled out. And once we begin to apply it, we find there's lots of things we can use in it that help us learn about ourselves, to realize the limitations of grasping onto a self, attaching to a self. Until we see those, of course, we're still living in a little bit of unwisdom, lack of wisdom. With the dawning of wisdom, then also comes the dawning of liberation. So for those who aspire to liberation and freedom from suffering, there is a way, there is hope. Just have to keep going with it. Yeah. Okay.